This week on the RTS podcast, we talked to Jake Zipkin about cats.
Reactive training systems.
Is Polly going to whip out a cat too? So, I mean, so far we've got Adam with a cat, we had Jake with a cat.
You got a problem?
I know.
So,
I don't have any animals here.
You have a gym cat? What's wrong with you, Paulie?
No, Brooklyn. I'm gonna probably hold up some kind of rat or something.
Yeah, they're big enough to be cats, aren't they? I mean,
They are big enough. So you see some of them and you're like, holy crap! Oh, actually, there's big raccoons in Brooklyn now.
oh wow.
Well, raccoons are they're mean.
Yeah. Now they're running around Brooklyn, terrorizing Brooklyn. We stopped to take a picture of it, and they ran at us.
Mike, you're all blurry. I don't know if it's your computer or if that's just what you look like.
Mike's pixelated.
I'm out of focus.
He's part of the machine now.
Right. Good luck taking shots of that one at the Arnold, Adam.
He's more machine now than man. Twisted and evil. Yeah,
I am
right.
out of focus.
Dude, at the Arnold, I'm it's gonna be nuts. I'm just ready to be running around for 3 days straight.
Adam, are you supposed to rub your cat that much?
He loves it, dude. Watch. Seriously, watch this.
Dude, our cat likes that too. They're fucking
Dude,
weird, man.
He loves it.
Look at Paulie's face right now. he doesn't know how to take that.
I'm just hoping you'll do it to me if I put on a little fur. You start smacking my back or whatever.
Look at Mike. Mike can't do it. He's over it already.
That's the running joke in our house, honestly, is that Cloud Monster is like the alpha male of this house. Like, he's even more so than me.
He's the real cat daddy.
He is.
See what you did
So
there.
if anybody's offended by what you've just witnessed, I want to make sure that you send your hate mail to adam.palmer.
And any issues with PETA or whatever, and we're probably gonna eat the cat afterwards.
Yeah.
So there's no confusion.
But, you know, all cats aside, we're supposed to talk about CrossFit, right?
We're supposed to, right? But I don't know. Jacob, do you have anything interesting to say about CrossFit?
It's all in the book, so I guess you can just read that. We can call it a day.
All right, see you guys later.
Yeah,
we're going to keep talking about cats, apparently.
Yeah.
I assure you, having extensive experience with both, cats are more interesting than CrossFit.
Wait. So you've written a book, you say?
I have written a book, yes.
How many pages is the book? How long is it?
Right.
It was 108 when I finished it. I think after formatting, it's a little over 200. It's like 210, something like that.
So you went to double spacing afterwards just to pad it out?
So the
Yeah,
first
man,
question the audience is going to have is, like, what makes you qualified to write a book on CrossFit? So just tell us a little bit about yourself, Jake.
Well, I'm really good at making people exercise a lot. I don't know if it works, but no. I've been involved with CrossFit since 2005. I got into it through my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach, actually, a guy named Mike Weaver, who was a trainer back at CrossFit HQ. I'm from Northern California, small city called Monterey, which is about 45 minutes from SoCal, where CrossFit started. I was getting in shape for a tournament, and he said, you should check this out, and I did a few workouts, and for some reason became obsessed and never looked back. I actually stopped doing jiu-jitsu and just focused all my efforts on that. A couple years later, I ended up getting hired on for a job on the East Coast as the head coach at a CrossFit gym out there that was opening up. Stayed there for about 6 months before realizing I was not good at being someone's employee. Those of you who know me probably shocked by that. And flew home, opened a gym in Monterey, which I ended up running for about 6.5 years. Sold it not recently, I guess a little over a year ago. And in that time, I started working with competitors back in 2009. I competed in the first 2 CrossFit Games when you didn't have to qualify. You just showed up and put your name on a piece of paper and competed at the ranch. And after the first weekend, I was just fascinated by it. After the 2007 Games, I just was obsessed with this idea of seeing how far we could push it and how good people could be at all these disparate sort of domains of fitness, and never looked back. So now it's full-time. I sold the gym, and all I do is work with competitive CrossFit athletes, some grid athletes, and I provide programming for gyms as well.
See, that's an interesting thing that that you're starting to get into now, or at least it seems to me from where I sit that you're starting to get into programming stuff for gyms. How does that work?
Well, it's pretty straightforward. There's a lot of gyms out there, both CrossFit and otherwise. I have a lot of CrossFit affiliates, a few gyms that are not, and I think that people are just starting to realize that programming is a specialty, and it's really hard. And I learned this the hard way. Running a brick and mortar business, you have a lot of things on your plate, and it's hard to also be a really, really good programmer. And it takes a lot of time if you're serious about giving your clients a good service. And I think people are starting to realize that there's this market now. There are people who, and I'm far from the only one. There's a lot of really good people out there who have dedicated their careers to just programming for CrossFit type endeavors. So people are starting to outsource. So with me, the way it works is I send out a week of programming at a time, a week in advance. Before starting the project, before launching, I did like a survey of gyms. I think I had about 50 gyms. I basically got an idea of like what the averages were in terms of total space, how big their training space is, what kind of equipment they have, how many members they have, how big their classes are. And I just tried my best to create a program based around those averages so that it would be pretty easy to adjust. And we've got about 15 gyms now, and seems to be going pretty well.
Nice. Paulie and I were talking before we got started here about Project Momentum, which is something that we've got going on. And so for us, Project Momentum, it's different in that it's not for a gym. Powerlifters are too decentralized for that, to be honest. But we've got a large group of people, and we're basically giving them a program, monitoring how they're going to do and seeing who responds, who doesn't respond, stuff like that. But we were talking about some of the different challenges and just differences in reaction to a big program like that, and we were thinking about, since we knew that we were going to be talking to you a little bit later on, like, I wonder how Jake manages things like that in with your facilities programming,
For instance, how live is it? How when you're programming, are you setting something up? You get feedback from the gym owner. Do you make adjustments to your program? How do you handle stuff like that?
Sure. So I generally work in most of the year in 12-week macro cycles broken up into 3-4-week mesos. Sometimes that's a little bit changed. Like right now, we're about to enter a 7-week meso because it's the CrossFit Open is coming up, so things are a little odd. But here's basically how the process works. I have about 15 gyms. One of those gyms follows a week ahead of schedule. So I always send the programming out a week in advance. It's got sometimes like scaling guides. It's got time caps so that people have some guidelines on how to adjust. But I have one gym that follows a week ahead. What they do is at the end of each week, they send me kind of a summary that tells me, hey, these particular workouts went wrong, or this workout was a little bit difficult to scale, or whatever. They just give me their feedback, and then I have a sort of short-term beta test where I can always make minute adjustments before sending that week of training out to the rest of the group. As far as data collection, we did a beta test that was 14 weeks long, and with that I did distinct test weeks, beginning and end. I'm not a big fan of doing that now. Powerlifters may be decentralized, but like when you get powerlifters, they're gonna follow the plan. They're gonna be consistent. If you tell them 4 days a week of training, they're gonna do their 4 days a week of training. We're working with pure Gen Pop here. I calculated based on averages. There's about 125 clients average at these gyms. So with 15 gyms, that totals just under 1,900 people, and the majority of those are going to be Gen Pop, 2 to 3 days a week. So it's really hard to get all of them to get the full training effect of the program. So I track long-term averages, and that's why I kind of don't like for them doing distinct testing weeks. So there's certain parameters of my own that I like to regularly retest, stuff like back squat, front squat, etc. But of course, with Gen Pop, I can't be like every 12-week macro cycle is working towards a 1-rep max back squat. We have to create some variety. But it'll be back squat or front squat or deadlift and some kind of upper body lift. And then the big sports-specific tests, although we will do like the kind of conventional CrossFit benchmarks for people to test for themselves, the stuff I'm really interested in is tracking the open year to year, because that's just a ton of data. So that and sometimes it's hard to get people to buy into that. So what I'm looking at doing is really tracking averages, because it's year to year, but that's where I really want to get the most valuable data. It's hard to get Gen Pop people to say, well, here's 12 weeks of training and we're testing your back squat and this workout at the end. Instead, I think it's more valuable with my clientele to focus on how they're developing year to year to year.
Of course, and I mean, it's just it's a difference in purpose. For us, the Project Momentum stuff is, intended to be a test. We definitely don't run the same type of processes with our normal athletes. Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting though, managing large groups. And it's a bit like herding cats sometimes. It's just. And I think powerlifters in general have an expectation for a bit of customization with their programming. And we can talk about whether that's right or wrong, but that does seem to be the expectation. So there's a lot more, people need more guidance, I think, just like, hey, I've got to work an extra shift this week, now what? I don't know, maybe it's just that General Pop doesn't know that they need to ask those questions.
Yeah, it's just a very different, like I said, if you're a power lifter, like pretty much nobody is powerlifting because, I just want to stay in shape, so this is what I do.
Right.
That's the majority of my clientele, at least with regards to the gym program. Now, I also work with competitors, and that's a whole different thing, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Those people ask those questions, and they get the guidance. But when we're talking about programming for gyms, what I've found is I have to do two things. One, I have to trust the gym owners to be able to solve a lot of their own problems, because, like the obvious stuff, not every gym's going to be the same. But I'm also, and they know this, every gym gets the same program. And that's part of the value of it for me, because I'm getting more and more data, and that means I can make the program better and better because I have an accurate idea of how it's working on a large scale. But it also means that the gym owners have to be capable of kind of tweaking it for their gym's needs, which is why I send it out a week in advance. Fortunately, they are. I haven't had problems with anybody. 99% of the time, they're fine. They can make those minute adjustments. It's just about having the program. And occasionally they have questions, but it's usually pretty straightforward. So it's kind of like delegating. Essentially, what I'm doing is I'm sending them this program, and the head coach or the programmer or the owner or whatever of each gym, they're sort of my representative of the program in that gym. It's their job to make it work for that sample of the community at large.
Do you put the gym owners through any training or any kind of introduction to get them fully on board with what you're doing?
Not really. I provide an FAQ, and I try to have a video call with everyone. Like when somebody emails me with an interest, I'm going to email them back and say, hey, we'd love to have you on board. Let's set up a time to talk. So I try to actually chat with them and kind of give them an idea of how it works, and give them a really thorough breakdown, answer their questions. And then as a matter of principle, I try to make myself pretty available. If people email me, I get back to them as quickly as I can. And I'm always willing to get on a video call and talk. So it's more of a kind of ongoing organic process, rather than just telling them outright, hey, here's everything. Here's this week-long training we do for you to understand how it works. It's a little more organic than that, but I do my best to make sure they're very well informed and understand how everything works.
What's really interesting to me is you seem very much more attuned to the live coach audience as we are, and that a lot of what we do and what we preach is targeted towards coaches that own powerlifting gyms. But for you, your target audience is very much the CrossFit gym owner.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just I find it preferable personally to work with them on a kind of case-by-case basis. I find that I do my best job of expressing myself when I have people ask specific questions, and again, most of these people do. Interestingly, the people who approach me are not like rank beginners who have no idea how to program.
Right.
And I've heard similar sentiments from one of the other really good, I think really good affiliate programming services out there, a guy named Jeremy Jones. I can't remember what his like program name is, but I was talking to Jeremy, and he's made this, talked about this in like CrossFit affiliate groups. The people who approach him are usually really well educated. They're not the people who are rank beginners and have no idea what they're doing. They know what they're doing, and that tends to be why they seek us out. They see the difference, and they understand the value, and they know how much work goes into it. So I've found it really useful to talk with those people one-on-one because they have good questions and specific questions, and they're often unique questions. Some of them are the same, but they're often, they have these specific thoughts, and those discussions not only help me to make sure the program works as well as possible for them, but they also kind of lead me to think about, I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point. How can we address this in future? And it's all part of the kind of organic process of making the program better and better and better.
The wise man admits that he knows nothing, and the idiot is the one wandering around thinking he knows everything.
Socrates died at the end, right?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Just making sure.
Jake, you and I have talked in the past about autoregulation, and you and I have worked together in the past as well, but we've talked about using autoregulation in a powerlifting context. I'm assuming that that's probably not part of your gym program, or is it? Or is that something that you reserve more for your one-on-one type?
So when I first ran CrossFit Monterey, or not first ran, when I did run CrossFit Monterey, I think we hold the honor of being the first CrossFit gym ever to implement RTS methodology. We actually, I think I sent a picture, yeah. I had the RPE chart printed out, and blown up and laminated and up on the wall. Yeah. And it actually worked really well. I think it was really, really valuable. And we've talked about this before. Not only because the system itself is good, but because it tricks people into being process oriented. And when I do my lecture, I do a lecture on mindset at our seminars, and what I talk about is it's really important to understand that if I program a 5 at 9 versus saying, hey, go hit a new 5RM, or even hit 88% for a set of 5, I keep the athlete invested in hitting a 5 at 9. And I think that's really, really important, especially for competitive athletes. Because if you go in and you hit a 5 rep max and hit a new PR, or hit a 5 at 9 PR, or you're at 90% of your best 5 at 9, it doesn't matter. You hit the 5 at 9. And that's really what counts. And especially with competitive athletes, it's hard to get that into their heads. And this is natural, but as a result of their personalities and the same things that make them competitive, they want to be better every day. We know that's not realistic, but I've found that using RPE helps them to just kind of show up and do the work. And it had much the same effect on our general pop clients. I also think that it was actually, a lot of people think like, and maybe with good reason, okay, RPE is not a tool for new clients or people who are new to lifting weights, but what we found is that when it was kind of a guided RPE in a situation with a coach, it was really good for getting them to know their limitations and to understand what heavy feels like and what light feels like. And it's really functionally no different than just saying, hey, we're going to squat 3 sets of 5 today, and we're going to tell you when to stop. But having a kind of guided RPE for new clients, I think was actually really helpful. Now, if they had to figure it out on their own, it'd be hopeless because, as you guys know, I don't know how frequently any of you guys work with like ranked beginners who are just general pop. They've never lifted weights before.
Even a bunch of our intermediate guys were like, okay, we gotta help you with this because,
yeah.
I think personality is a big part of it too, and you get some guys that are, it was never heavy enough. They always had more in the tank no matter what, and
yeah.
That's not true. And then other people, if the weight, it feels heavy on my feelings, then they're ready to hang it up for today.
Yeah,
So
well, and
there's kind of two ends of an extreme there.
yeah, and with people who have never lifted weights at all, they have no concept of what heavy feels like. And I don't mean that in a it's not a derogatory comment. It's just a fact of never having done it before, right? They don't know they have no frame of reference for what heavy weight feels like. But I found that the RPE stuff worked. Now so I still use RPEs a lot in my programming for my competitive athletes and in the tzstrength.com programming. We do still do some percentage work, and but it's a mix. We do a lot of RPE stuff.
Yeah, it's all tools to be used.
Yeah.
And I can attest to what you're saying, just because I'm kind of straddling both worlds, owning a gym, doing the guided RPE, getting people introduced. But it's a lot easier to do it in person than it is to just kind of throw somebody, and I'm talking about a novice, somebody who's never had any exposure to this, and say their training age is say less than 2, like their serious training age.
And that's like I said, that's a big chunk of the clientele I'm dealing with. So in the affiliate programming, the gym programming, I don't use RPEs, but I don't use a whole lot of percentages either. I try to keep the training cycles, first of all, I try to keep each macro cycle self-contained. So like if there is percentage work, it's going to be based off something. So it might be like 1 week we hit a 5 rep max, and then the percentage work is 2 down sets with whatever, 85% of that. And then maybe the next week we'll take 90% of that 5 rep max and do it for 5 sets or whatever. So there's percentages, and there's to some extent some RPE work. Like I'll program what I would consider a 5 at 9. I'll just phrase it differently. I'll straight up say, do a heavy set of 5. They should leave a rep in the tank. And this is what I think ends up happening, is that the more experienced athletes who are there, they figure it out. It's not hard for them. And then the new people just get guided through it. So the main reason that I haven't used, put it this way, I use RPE. I just don't use like the same nomenclature that we would use for RTS style programming, because that's just one more thing that's going to confuse them. But
yeah, I can understand that too.
But there's definitely an element of RPE to what they do. For my competitors, there's some type of RPE in every domain, right? I break down the sport into 4 constituent domains, and then sport-specific prep: weightlifting, strength training, gymnastics, and energy systems development. And in all 4 of those, there's some type of RPE, some type of auto-regulated programming.
That's interesting. We've Adam and I have talked quite a bit in the past about using RPE for weightlifting, and of course, like the powerlifting style reps in reserve derived RPE chart doesn't really apply for something that's not really rep based. I mean, it's the same thing with strongman. Like if you have somebody who's trying to do a farmer's walk, well, there's no repetitions. How do you leave one in the tank?
Yeah. How do you figure that out?
So you just got to change your definitions a bit, and I think probably the most important thing is to figure out a pretty good definition and then keep it consistent.
Yeah, exactly. Precision is a lot more important than accuracy here. I think it doesn't matter it doesn't matter that much if you're right about having 1 rep in the tank. It does matter that what you call a 9 is the same every time.
Yeah.
So what we found is for weightlifting stuff, I did try a while back. I think Adam produced a weightlifting RPE chart. We tried that for a while. I didn't quite work out for me. So our RPE style stuff with weightlifting is a little bit more freeform. It's stuff like usually it's what I'd call longhand. They're directed by the notes on the programming. So it's build to a heavy double. You should be able to keep all your reps crisp and technical, and there shouldn't be any any chance of a miss unless it's a fluke. So it's kind of a longhand RPE.
Yeah, I had really toyed with the notion of not like weight kilos left in, but a combination of that plus some sort of technical RPE, whereas like the technique had to be within like 90% perfect or some heuristic,
Right, yeah. So it's kind of a longhand. With gymnastics, it's usually stuff, again, a little bit less systematized. But it'll be stuff, hey, this is a submaximal set, leave X amount of reps in the tank approximately. Especially with the higher rep stuff, just like with weight, with strength training. Mike, I think we said that I think we were talking once and we said anything below 80%, the RPE becomes harder and harder and harder and harder to gauge. So with like high rep gymnastic stuff, instead of saying, hey, leave 2 reps in the tank, it's leave between 3 and 5 reps in the tank. And then sometimes we will do, I guess we'd call it heavier gymnastics, so strict stuff, strict muscle ups, strict pull-ups, etc. And with that, it's usually like 6 minutes of volume accumulation, and I just tell them it's submaximal sets with perfect form all the way. But I would still consider that autoregulation. It's just less systematized. And of course, with energy systems training, that's where the RPE system originated. So that's pretty straightforward.
Sure. Yeah. I know another thing that we do. You were talking about how the RPE system, the whole concept, gets more and more fuzzy the lower the intensity. And really, the lower the RPE in general gets fuzzy. One thing that we've done, we're talking about tools and just having different tools to use. One thing that we've done to kind of help auto-regulate that sort of work, and this is, you can see this in the Project Momentum programming as well, is we'll have some sort of a benchmark set. For a powerlifter, a lot of times it's a moderate single, but it's something that's heavy enough that we can get a good benchmark, get a good gauge on where they're at for right now, and then basically use percentages to derive the rest of it for the rest of, maybe for the rest of that week or something like that. That allows us to auto-regulate the intensity, without. Since you're so low on the RPE scale, it doesn't matter. Like, who cares if it's a 5 RPE versus a 6? You're really not out that much if you're having, a real fluke bad day and okay, so your RPE is +1. Now if you're hitting a triple or any set really at a 9 RPE and you're having a day that's 5% worse than normal, well, now you're at risk of a miss, and that does things to athletes psychologically and increase recovery time and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, I think it's just kind of another way to get the right weight on the bar, which is the whole point of any of this.
Sure. Yeah, I think the higher the intensity and the higher the RPE climb, we have a pretty good idea of kind of what parameter as far as percentage of 1RM, like where you need to be. If you want to build hypertrophy, you got to be between like 60 and 75%. If you want to build strength, you got to be between 70 and 90% most of the time. That's where you're going to spend. That's where you're going to do most of your work. So the higher the RPE climbs, the more important it is to auto-regulate, because, well, when you're at 95%, then every little thing matters, and it's all about getting the rep in, and it's really technical. But when you're at 70%, like, you just kind of suck it up and do the work. Oh, I'm a little slower than usual today, or I don't feel great. Yeah, but it's 70%. You're not going to miss. You're just going to be uncomfortable. Well, so I think that's a good way to look at it. When you're there, when you're in a volume block, a hypertrophy block, you're just putting work in, 70% on the bar. Suck it up. You'll be fine. But when it's, okay, well, we're peaking. Today you need to build up to a really heavy double because we want to get a gauge of where you're at. We're going for a 2 at 9. Okay, well, now the way you feel matters.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting topic, and I know, Mike, we talked about this a little bit, I don't know, we haven't really talked about it a whole lot, but I don't know, Jake, where do you see CrossFit intersecting with powerlifting, and what types of things powerlifters can be using to improve what they do?
Well, I think that depends a lot on the powerlifter's training age. So I'm not one of these guys, like, when I think about GPP for powerlifting, at least for relatively well-trained powerlifters, I don't think that most of the stuff CrossFitters do is particularly applicable. I'm not a big, like, I know that, what a lot of people will say is, oh, well, it works because the workouts are short and high intensity and it's not a bunch of volume. I think that's backwards. I think that if you want to do GPP for a powerlifter in a base building phase, it should be low intensity cardio because it's not stressful. It doesn't tend to tax the same muscle fibers. And you can, like, basically what you sacrifice with like 30 minutes at a 120 heart rate on an exercise bike, you can get back just by eating more calories. And it can bring up your general work capacity and just make you healthier. CrossFit workouts are really, really hard. like they are stressful. You know, if you do 10 or 12 minutes of thrusters and burpees and pull-ups, first of all, they're taxing muscularly. They are tend to have lactate components, which if you're using glycogen, like glycogen takes 48 hours of full rest to replace, and they're hard. And as you guys probably know, like developing the glycolytic system is very contrary to developing ATP. So I think GPP for powerlifters, as long as by the time they're like intermediate, we'll say, should be a little more specific. I like low-intensity aerobic work, low impact. I'm not a big fan of running for powerlifters because I beat up joints, but rowing, biking, swimming, if you are technically proficient enough to do it at low intensity. Like, I can't swim at all. Hi, Adam. I can't swim. I'm horrible at it. So, like, I can't keep my heart rate under 150. I can't do it. It's not going to
I
happen.
could rest in the water for a while.
Yeah, but the question is kind of, how high is your heart rate?
Try not to drown. That's it.
Yeah. So
Try not to drown for 5 minutes.
Yeah. If you're an intermediate level lifter, your GPP way out from competition, maybe you do some low intensity cardio, 30 minutes on the bike 3 times a week, and then you're more like, basically the better you are, the higher your specificity has to be. So I think for higher level power lifters, your GPP is going to be your hypertrophy block, your lower weights and higher reps. And I know some guys are fans of like sets on a clock to build special work capacity, and I kind of fall into that camp. If you're a novice, if you're new to training, then CrossFit's great because you can build sort of a general base of fitness and you can improve your athleticism. But and it's like any sport, the better you get, the narrower your scope has to be. Like I would never recommend a guy like Mike do something like CrossFit, or like it's additional stress. It's
Never do this. Never do this.
not until you're done with powerlifting. No. I mean, once you decide you want to be a real athlete, then come on.
Sign me up then.
No, but if you have somebody who's pretty new and they want to get into powerlifting, but don't really have an athletic background, then absolutely they can lift 2 or 3 days a week and have 2 days of CrossFit workouts, and it's going to help them get in better shape, and they're going to be able to handle better training volume. That's totally fine.
So that's a great.
I think that's a good idea. Like I like where you're going with that. Also because think about it from a psychological standpoint. A lot of if you're serious about powerlifting and you're going to take powerlifting to its conclusion, then it's demanding, it's hard, and we talk about it casually, but the workouts are grueling. I mean, do you really want to get in the gym and do another, just maximum effort, high intensity interval workout? No, you don't.
CrossFit is really hard. It hurts a lot, but you know what? I mean, people will whine about it. Oh, cardio's the worst. But let me tell you something. 30 minutes on a bike at with your heart rate at like 125, you can watch Netflix. Like, you don't even notice it. But it can make you healthier. It can help keep you lean, and it can. First of all, it's going to make you a healthier human. That's important. I think people lose sight of that, but it is good for your heart, which will keep you from dying. But it'll increase your work. It can increase your work capacity. Again, I think the more advanced you are, the less true that is. But it's more importantly, it's just not really going to impact your training that much. But you know what? Go do a 12-minute really hard CrossFit workout and tell me it's not going to impact your squats the next day.
Well, and another interesting thing about this, right? And hopefully we'll get some more insight on this from the Project Momentum thing that we're running now. So we're doing the data collection from Project Momentum with an exit questionnaire, which we could be more robust with it, but in an online setting it gets pretty difficult to manage. I would be interested to see what the correlation is between people who have a good aerobic base coming into the program and how well they do on the other end. In addition to other factors of just being used to the frequency, because it's just a lot more work than most people are used to.
Yeah, assuming that the athletes are at a similar level of training age with regards to their powerlifting, and knowing, I mean, I at least have a pretty good idea of, I don't know what the specific training that you're doing is, but I know what your volume loads tend to look like.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that a big part of the reason that, I did really well with your programming. I got a lot of strength, especially in my squat. And I think a big part of that is that I could survive the workouts better than people. I mean, I was on a 4-day-a-week program, and, some weeks on my high-volume weeks, I distinctly remember there was one week where Monday I squatted like a 3 at 9, 3 at 7, 8, 9, and 2 down sets, and then did the same on bench, and then did the same rep scheme with 4s on 2-count pause bench. And then the next day, 1 day later, I had 3 at 7, 8, 9, 2 down sets deadlift, like 6 sets of 4 on pin press. I don't remember if it was at 8 or at 9, and then 7 sets of 4. It was like 4 at 6, 7, 8, and 4 repeats of a pause squat. And I just there's no question in my mind. The reason I survived training like that is because I had an aerobic. My athletic background when I was younger was martial arts. I had an aerobic base from that. I did CrossFit for quite a few years. I could handle that kind of training volume.
And unless we scare anybody away, we have people on the other end of the aerobic base as well that get training that's definitely serious.
Yeah, what I mean is when I started training with you, that we jumped right into that. I think that the reason I could jump right into that is that I had a high general work capacity. So I would be surprised if you didn't see. If they're already intermediate level lifters, I'm not sure, but I'm 100% sure that if you took a bunch of novices and some of them had a good aerobic base and others didn't, the novices would get. You'd have to do this over the course of like a year because they need time to stop being novices or at least kind of edge out of that. But I'm confident that they'd be able to get better faster because they'd be able to handle more work, and more work means you get better.
Well, and I'm thinking of another guy I'm working with now who does not have a good aerobic base, and it's not. I mean, when you're working with somebody in this plane, like it's not immediately obvious that that's the root cause of the problem, but we're always having recovery issues, and to the point where even deadlifting once a week is difficult to recover from. Now, my style of training, and that that's not typical, and that's not.
I think we always deadlifted. We always did some kind of deadlift twice a week when I was training.
Yeah, I mean at least twice a week, right? Sometimes 3 times a week. And like the Project Momentum people were deadlifting 4 times a week. I've been deadlifting 4 times a week, and it's been going great. If you can handle it, it's great. But if you can't handle it, then you have to scale it back. Now, you run into these issues of, okay, now what? Like I've kind of done as much work as I can recover from, and I've gotten as strong as I can get. And if I try to push it any further, then I break. So what now?
Well, and if you're having trouble recovering from your strength training, ostensibly the way you improve your work capacity is by doing more work. But I mean, so you can do that with lifting, right? You can take a step back and say, okay, well, let's do a GPP block, and we're going to lower the intensity significantly, but we're gonna have you deadlift twice a week and do time sets. But with relatively novice lifters, that may not be necessary, and B, it may not even be the most effective way to do it. You might be able to just throw in 3 days a week of 30 minutes at a pretty low heart rate, and it might have, it might make a big difference pretty quickly. Again, especially with somebody who's novice. And remember, even if you're an intermediate powerlifter, you can still be a novice in terms of your aerobic capacity and your general work capacity if you've never trained it.
Right.
So, it's absolutely, it's another tool in the toolbox for just improving your general work capacity will improve your potential for your special work capacity, which is ultimately what we're looking at, right? If you're having trouble recovering, it's a special work capacity problem. Yeah. So improve general work capacity and then build on that.
Well, I think what you laid out there as far as having a graduated scale, if you're more in the beginner, do this, and more in the intermediate, do that, and so on. I think that's a really good way to think about it. It gives you a lot of benefits and a lot of flexibility in terms of customizing that and making sure it fits with your programming.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to have to wrap it up here pretty soon. People get mad when I talk for more than 30 minutes. So, can you? We talked briefly about your book. I have a copy because I'm special. But for people that don't have a copy yet, how would you sort that out?
Yeah, I'm frowning. I don't have a copy. That's fun. I have other books behind me. I don't need that book. My bookshelf is full.
So the book is called Fitness as Sport, Theory and Practice. You can get it from Juggernaut Training Systems. I have a website, it's TZ Strength, letter T, letter Z, strength.com, where I post programming that is designed for people who want to compete in events like CrossFit and Grid. Not recommended for novices. It is a lot of volume. I'm a heartless human being when it comes to that. I will make you run 10 800s and you'll hate me. So if you're new to this, don't jump on. That website will soon-ish, I hope, have a lot more on it. Stuff like it'll have direct access to the gym programming and all that. But for now, tzstrength.com, and then the book Fitness as Sport is available from Juggernaut Training Systems.
All right, great. Well, Jake, thanks for hanging out, spending some time with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks everybody for watching. See you guys next time.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the RTS podcast. If you have any feedback for the show, please send your comments and questions to mike@reactivetrainingsystems.com or adam@reactivetrainingsystems.com. Thanks.